Hello and welcome to the Banker's Tech Talk video series, now in its 5th year of tracking fintechs. You can watch all the previous episodes on thebanker.com/techtalks. I'm Joy Macknight, Managing Editor at The Banker, and my guest this week is David Brear, Group CEO of 11FS, a consultancy firm that helps traditional banks digitally transform as well as create digital ventures. David, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I actually attended the premiere of the film that you did last year, which was really tracking the rise of the fintech ecosystem in the UK. When you were interviewing the great and the good of the fintech world, was there anything that came out in terms of trends that you maybe hadn't anticipated before?
I mean, it was really interesting to sort of delve down because I think many people just don't understand that story. You know, a lot of people who are working in fintech today don't really realize what happened in the financial crisis actually set up the ecosystem that we've got today. So, you know, many of the stories was really where people were then and actually why did they get into fintech? You know, talking to Anne Boden, talking to Tom Blomfield, Nikolai from Revolut. You know, it was really interesting to see the work that they were doing then and how that inspired them to try and change financial services. Even if you talk to people like Ashok at Barclays, where they were then, you know, I think the crisis is this generation's Elvis. You know, everybody knows where they were when it happened, when everybody knows where they were working at that time. But actually, kind of looking at what the inspiration was fantastic. And in many of those systems, it was actually the regulatory change that really spurred all of the opportunities that we see today.
Okay, what would you say are going to be the major trends in fintech in 2020?
I think for me, I think the trends that are happening this year are predominantly around the change that we're actually seeing in the big banks, if I'm honest with you. I think fintech has sort of awoken the giants, really. We've seen them sort of attack different slices of financial services. And now what we're really seeing is the really big organizations start to fight back. It's like Empire Strikes Back. It's that second movie where you really see the defense kind of step up. And predominantly banks have been spending billions and billions of pounds for a really long period of time, but actually just spending money doesn't mean that you can make change happen. What we're seeing now is like really focused cultural transformations within really big organizations, which actually ultimately has been the major inhibitor that's been holding them back.
Okay. Obviously, in the UK, open banking has been in place now for over 2 years. What do you think needs to happen for it to really be a success?
Honestly, I think it's when we stop talking about open banking and we start talking about what open banking is doing. You know, the man or woman on the street, I mean, my mum doesn't need to know what open banking does, but actually if we stop talking about the benefit of APIs or we stop talking about, you know, open banking as this sort of panacea for opening up the market and actually start focusing on the use cases that really add value to day-to-day lives, that's when I think it'll actually be having the impact.
Okay. My next question is around M26 and its exit from the UK. You know, what kind of impact do you think that's going to have? And, you know, do you think we'll see more of those kind of moves?
I mean, I think this was an interesting one with N26. I think actually if you look at what they say and probably why it was, I think they're probably two different things. I think Brexit was quite a convenient sort of excuse for them sort of leaving the UK market, especially when they've got such a global spread. You know, they're really focusing on New York and the US right now in terms of expanding out markets. But I think it actually just shows where we are in the cycle. If you look at the retail fintech space, it's actually very competitive in the UK market. You've got, you know, 3 or 4 major players who are, you know, expanding out millions and millions of customers now. So I think for N26, it was really about, well, where do we focus to have the, you know, biggest bang for our buck? And really, that's probably not going to be the UK market for them right now. I think there are other, this doesn't sort of stem a trend. I don't think it's going to be a big trend we're going to see for other players, you know, shutting up shop in London and deciding to sort of focus in other places, because retail banking is only one area of fintech. With all those other little slices of financial services, there'll be many other players that'll be coming to these shores for sure.
But Brexit must be having some kind of impact, do you think? And do you think what will be its impact more long term?
Yeah, I think we sort of almost don't know the impact of Brexit yet, and that's almost the worst thing, really. I think the sort of uncertainty is difficult. You know, I don't want to say I don't want to downplay it too much, because I think the ecosystem that we've built here in London, particularly, is built on many building blocks, and I think probably the most major one of those is talent. And if I'm honest, I think probably with Brexit, and actually coupled with that, the changes that we're seeing with IR35 as well, I do worry that actually we're the magnet has been very strong for talent for well over a decade. And actually, are we going to start seeing people kind of find it easier to work on other shores, or a feeling like they're being kind of pushed out of the country? And if, we can have the best regulatory system and a global leader from a financial services perspective, but if we don't have really talented people who are really looking for better ways to move these things forward, the system will definitely kind of slow down. But I mean, I'm confident that won't happen, but the only way it doesn't happen is us making that not happen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your insights, David.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.